6 months had passed since the Battle of Sol. The galaxy looked different now. Species that once dismissed humans as soft newcomers now gave them a wide berth. Trade routes shifted. Alliances were formed. The old power structures were crumbling. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his ready room aboard the Horizon's Edge. The ship was still a diplomatic vessel, technically, but now it bristled with weapons that everyone could see. No more hiding. No more pretending. A message came through from Admiral Helen Cross. Jake opened it and read quickly. The Council was calling another emergency session. Humanity was being formally charged with disrupting galactic peace. The Velcrin had finally gathered enough support to force a vote. Jake smiled grimly. Let them try. The Horizon's Edge docked at Zenith Prime 2 days later. Jake noticed immediately that things had changed. Human ships now docked in the premium bays near the station core. Other species vessels made room. Security personnel nodded respectfully as Jake walked past. Fear and respect looked very similar from the outside. Ambassador Patricia Lynn was waiting in the human delegation quarters. She looked different too. Older, more tired, but also more confident. She carried herself like someone who had stopped caring what others thought. They're going to try to censure us, Patricia said without preamble. The Velcrin convinced about 200 species to support a formal condemnation. They want to restrict human military operations, impose oversight, maybe even demand we reduce our fleet. Will they get the votes? Lauren Blake asked. She stood near the window watching ships come and go. Probably not, Patricia said. We have allies now. Species that remember we saved them or protected them. But it's going to be close. What if they do pass it? Dennis Carter asked. Then we ignore it, Patricia said simply. Earth's government was clear. We don't take orders from the Council anymore. We cooperate when it serves our interests, but we don't bow. Jake nodded. When's the session? 2 hours. Get ready. This is going to be ugly. The Council chamber was packed when they arrived. More species than Jake had ever seen in one place. The tension was thick enough to cut. He took his seat with the human delegation and waited. The Velcrin representative floated to the central podium. This council was founded on principles of cooperation and peaceful resolution of conflicts. For 900 years we have maintained these principles. Then humanity joined us, and within a single generation, they have brought war back to our space. Murmurs of agreement rippled through some sections of the chamber. Humanity has acted with excessive force. They have launched military operations without proper authorization. They have destroyed hundreds of ships belonging to a council member species. They have invaded sovereign territory, and they have shown no remorse for any of it. The Velcrin turned to look directly at the human delegation. Worst of all, they have inspired others to follow their example. In the past 6 months, we have seen a 40% increase in military incidents across council space. Species that once resolved differences through diplomacy now reach for weapons first. This is humanity's legacy. Jake felt his jaw tighten. That was a clever argument. Blame humans for everyone else's violence. Therefore, the Velcrin continued, we propose the following resolution. Humanity will reduce its military forces to pre-conflict levels. All human military operations will require council approval. Human ships will be subject to regular inspections, and humanity will pay reparations to the Krell Dominion for damages incurred during the recent conflict. The chamber exploded with noise. Some species cheered. Others shouted objections. Jake caught Patricia's eye. She looked ready to fight. The speaker called for order. It took several minutes to restore quiet. The human delegation may respond. Patricia stood and walked to the podium. She didn't look nervous. She looked dangerous. The Velcrin representative makes interesting points, Patricia began. Let me address them one by one. First, humanity has not brought war to council space. War was already here. The Krell were attacking civilians long before we responded. The difference is that we actually did something about it. Second, we have not acted without authorization. The Council granted us permission to defend our assets. We did exactly that. If the Council doesn't like how we interpreted that permission, perhaps they should have been more specific. Third, we will not reduce our military forces. We will not seek Council approval for our operations. We will not submit to inspections. And we will absolutely not pay reparations to a species that attacked our homeworld. The Velcrin's body pulsed with angry colors. You cannot simply refuse a council resolution. Watch us, Patricia said flatly. This council failed to protect its own members. It let predators like the Krell run wild while you debated and formed committees. We're not going to trust our safety to a system that has proven itself inadequate. Then you reject the Council's authority? The speaker asked carefully. We reject the Council's authority over our military and our right to self-defense, Patricia clarified. We're happy to participate in trade negotiations, cultural exchanges, and diplomatic discussions. But when it comes to security, we handle that ourselves. This is unacceptable, the Velcrin said. If humanity refuses to follow Council law, they should be expelled. Go ahead, Patricia said. Expel us. See what happens. The chamber went silent. It was a bold move calling their bluff. Jake held his breath. The speaker looked around the chamber nervously. Perhaps we should take a brief recess to consider our options. No need. A new voice spoke up. Jake turned to see the Minorian representative standing. Minoria would like to make a statement. The speaker nodded, looking relieved for the interruption. The Council recognizes Minoria. The Minorian walked to a secondary podium. My people were victims of Krell aggression. We lost 3,000 lives. The Council offered us condolences and committee hearings. Humanity offered us protection. When humans freed the Yulani slaves, they didn't just save lives. They sent a message that some things are worth fighting for. The Minorian looked directly at the Velcrin. You want to punish humanity for being strong? For defending themselves and others? That's foolish. We should be learning from them, not condemning them. Minoria formally opposes the resolution against humanity. Furthermore, we propose an alternative. Let humanity continue operating as they have been. Let them serve as a security guarantor for species that request it. Judge them by their actions, not by your fears. Several other species stood to voice agreement. The Yulani representative spoke tearfully about freedom. The Kavari representative talked about safety. The Tarvali representative simply said that humanity had done what the Council should have done years ago. The tide was turning. Jake watched species that had been quiet suddenly find their voices. They were tired of the Council's ineffective bureaucracy. They wanted something that actually worked. The Velcrin tried to rally support, but it was too late. When the vote finally came, the resolution failed. 347 species voted for it. 492 voted against. 8 abstained. Patricia returned to her seat beside Jake. That went better than expected. They tried to make an example of us, Jake said. Instead, we made an example of them. After the session, dozens of species approached the human delegation. Some wanted to apologize. Others wanted to negotiate. A few, the ones who had voted for the resolution, simply wanted to make sure humanity didn't hold grudges. Jake met with representatives from 15 species that day. Each one wanted something different. Security agreements, technology trades, cultural exchanges. The galaxy was realizing that humanity wasn't going anywhere, so they might as well make friends. One meeting stood out. A Velcrin approached Jake privately away from the main crowds. It was not the representative who had led the opposition, but a younger member of their delegation. Captain Morrison, may I speak candidly? The Velcrin asked. Of course, my elder was wrong to oppose you so strongly. Many of us younger Velcrins see things differently. We admire what humanity did. We wish our own species had such courage. Jake studied the alien carefully. Why are you telling me this? Because the galaxy is changing. The old species, the ones who have been comfortable for centuries, they're afraid of change. But younger species, newer members of the Council, we see opportunity. We see a chance to build something better than what we have. What do you want from humanity? Partnership, the Velcrin said simply. Not subservience, not protection. True partnership. We have technology and resources. You have strength and determination. Together, we could accomplish much. Jake considered the offer. I'll pass it along to my superiors. But understand something. We don't just protect our allies. We protect innocence. If your species ever does something like what the Krell did, we'll come for you too. I would expect nothing less, the Velcrin said. That's why we want to be on your side. Over the following weeks, the new reality settled in. Humanity had carved out a unique position in the galaxy. They weren't the strongest species militarily, not yet, but they were the most willing to use force when necessary. That made them valuable allies and dangerous enemies. Jake took the Horizon's Edge on a tour of human-protected systems. They visited the Kavari homeworld, where children painted pictures of human ships. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, staring at the massive space station ahead. Zenith Prime was enormous, a city floating among the stars. Thousands of ships came and went from its docking bays every hour. Each one carried a different alien species, creatures from worlds he could barely imagine. Jake had been doing this job for 5 years now. 5 years of smiling, nodding, and saying the right things to aliens who looked at humans like they were children playing dress-up. He wore his dress uniform, the one with all the medals he never talked about. His crew did the same. "Approaching Docking Bay 7, said Lauren Blake from her station. She was his tactical officer. Though most days she had nothing to do but monitor sensors. Their ship, the Horizon's Edge, was built for talking, not fighting. At least that's what everyone believed. "Thank you, Lauren," Jake said. "Dennis, how are our engines?" Dennis Carter looked up from his engineering console. "Running smooth, Captain. Though I still say we could use more power if we ever needed to move fast." "We won't need to move fast," Jake replied. "We're diplomats, remember?" The words tasted bitter in his mouth, but he said them anyway. That's what Earth wanted. Play nice, make friends, show the galaxy that humans could be civilized. The ship docked with a soft thud. Jake straightened his uniform and headed for the airlock. Lauren and Dennis followed. They had done this dance 100 times before. The station interior was breathtaking. High ceilings stretched up like cathedral arches. Aliens of every shape and size walked past. Some had fur, others had scales, and a few looked like they were made of living crystal. The air smelled strange, a mix of 1,000 different atmospheres filtered and blended. "Captain Morrison," a voice called out. Jake turned to see Ambassador Patricia Lynn approaching. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. "Right on time." "Always, Ambassador," Jake said with a smile he didn't feel. "We have a council session in 2 hours," Patricia said as they walked. "The Velkrin are proposing new trade regulations. Very boring, but we need to show support." "Understood." They walked through the station's main corridor. Jake noticed a group of Krell soldiers near one of the side passages. The Krell were tall, with dark armor that seemed to absorb light. They carried weapons openly, something most species didn't do on Zenith Prime. "They're getting bold," Lauren whispered beside him. "Not our problem," Patricia said firmly. "We don't get involved in council politics beyond our vote." Jake bit back his response. The Krell had been causing trouble for months. Pushing boundaries, testing limits. The council always responded the same way. More meetings, more committees, more words that meant nothing. The council chamber was massive. Seats rose in circular tiers, each section belonging to a different species. Humans had a small section near the back. Only 32 years in the council meant they were still newcomers, still proving themselves. Jake took his seat and prepared for 2 hours of tedium. The Velkrin representative, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish, droned on about tariff percentages. Other species argued about trade routes and resource allocation. Jake's mind wandered. He thought about Earth, about the mountains and oceans he hadn't seen in years, about the history lessons every human child learned, stories of wars and struggles that had shaped their species. Humans had clawed their way to the top of their world through blood and determination. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and countless conflicts. Then they reached the stars and found they had to pretend none of that mattered. "Captain," Lauren's voice came through his earpiece. "Private channel. We're getting reports. There's been an incident near the Fornax system." Jake kept his face neutral. "What kind of incident?" "Krell warships attacked a civilian transport. Minorian refugees. The ship was destroyed. 3,000 dead." Jake's hands clenched on the armrests of his chair. Around him, the council continued debating tariffs. "Does the council know?" he asked quietly. "The information just came through. They'll be informed soon." Jake waited. Surely someone would interrupt the session. Surely 3,000 dead civilians mattered more than trade percentages. 20 minutes passed. The Velkrin finished speaking. A Thoraxian representative began discussing mining rights. No one mentioned the massacre. Finally, a junior council aide approached the central podium and whispered something to the speaker. The speaker was a Zefali, a species that looked almost human, except for their silver skin and 3 eyes. "The council acknowledges receiving information about an incident in the Fornax system," the speaker announced. "This matter will be referred to the Security Committee for investigation. We will now continue with scheduled business." That was it. 3,000 lives reduced to an incident that would be investigated eventually. Jake stood up. Lauren grabbed his arm. "Captain, what are you doing?" I'm requesting permission to speak, Jake said. He pressed the button on his chair that sent a signal to the speaker. Patricia Lynn turned in her seat, her face alarmed. She shook her head sharply, but Jake ignored her. The speaker noticed his signal. The human delegation wishes to address the council? Yes, Speaker, Jake said. I'm Captain Jake Morrison. I'm requesting permission for human ships to provide security escorts for civilian transports in the Fornax region. A ripple of surprise went through the chamber. Species didn't usually volunteer for military operations. That won't be necessary, the speaker said smoothly. The council has security forces. With respect, Speaker, those security forces weren't there when 3,000 Minorians died today. The chamber went quiet. Jake could feel hundreds of alien eyes on him. The incident is under investigation, the speaker said, voice harder now. Your request is noted but denied. The council does not require human military intervention. Then what does the council require? Jake asked. How many more have to die before we're allowed to do something? Patricia stood up quickly. Captain Morrison is speaking out of turn. The human delegation apologizes and withdraws the request. Jake sat down, his jaw tight. Patricia glared at him. Lauren wouldn't meet his eyes. The session continued for another hour. When it finally ended, Patricia pulled Jake aside. What were you thinking? She demanded. I was thinking that we're letting people die while we debate trade policy. Jake shot back. We're here to build relationships, not start conflicts, Patricia said. Earth's position in the council is still fragile. We can't afford to make waves, and we can't afford to look weak. We look careful. We look measured. That's what we need to be, Patricia said. She softened slightly. I understand your frustration, Jake, I really do. But we're playing a long game here. Trust the process. Jake wanted to argue more, but he knew it was pointless. He nodded and walked away. That night, Jake stood in his quarters aboard the Horizon's Edge. He had a bottle of whiskey, real Earth whiskey, expensive and hard to get this far from home. He poured a glass and stared out the viewport at the stars. Lauren knocked and entered without waiting. You okay? No, Jake admitted. We're better than this, Lauren. Humanity is better than this. We're doing what Earth asked us to do. Why? Jake turned to face her. Why do we bow and scrape? Why do we act like we're afraid of our own shadow? Lauren sat down on his couch. Because if we show them what we really are, they might unite against us. Earth's leadership thinks it's better to be underestimated, even if it costs lives. Lauren didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, Sophie was on that transport today. Jake's blood ran cold. What? Dr. Sophie Green. She transferred to a medical ship 3 weeks ago. The ship was trying to reach the refugees when the Krell attacked. She's missing, presumed dead. The glass slipped from Jake's hand, whiskey spilling across the floor. Sophie had been with his crew for 2 years. She loved xenobiology, loved meeting new species, loved everything about space. She had smiled more than anyone he knew. Now she was gone because humans were too polite to fight back. How much longer are we going to let them think we're harmless? Lauren asked quietly. Jake looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the same anger in her eyes that he felt burning in his chest. Maybe not much longer, he said. The news of humanity's victory at Fornax spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Every species heard the story. The humans had not only defended Earth but had launched a rescue operation deep into enemy territory. They had freed slaves, dismantled military installations, and left the Krell Dominion broken. The council couldn't ignore it anymore. Ambassador Patricia Lynn received a formal summons. Humanity would answer for its actions before the full council assembly. Every species, every representative would be there to judge them. Jake Morrison stood beside Patricia in the preparation room outside the council chamber. His dress uniform felt uncomfortable after weeks in combat gear. Lauren Blake and Dennis Carter waited nearby, also in formal dress. Are you ready for this? Jake asked Patricia. The ambassador checked her reflection in a mirror, adjusting her gray hair. Ready as I'll ever be. They're going to try to make an example of us. Make us apologize, maybe impose sanctions. Will you apologize? Lauren asked. Patricia turned to face them, her expression hard. Not a chance. We did the right thing. If they can't see that, that's their problem. A Zafali aide opened the door. The council is ready for you. They walked into the chamber together. 847 species waited. The room buzzed with conversation. Some species looked angry. Others looked afraid. A few, the ones who had suffered under Krell aggression, looked hopeful. The Zephali speaker called the chamber to order. The council recognizes the human delegation. Ambassador Patricia Lynn, you and your people stand accused of excessive military force, violation of council sovereignty, and unilateral action without proper authorization. How do you respond? Patricia stood at the central podium. Jake stood behind her with the rest of the human delegation. He could feel hundreds of eyes on them. We respond by rejecting these accusations, Patricia said clearly. Her voice carried through the chamber without shouting. Everything we did was in defense of innocent lives and in accordance with the permissions the council granted us. You destroyed over 200 Krell warships, the Velcrin representative said. You invaded Krell territory. You dismantled their military presence in an entire system. That goes far beyond defense, does it? Patricia asked. The Krell attacked a human medical ship. They killed 109 of our people. They attacked Earth itself with 200 warships. Were we supposed to let them? Were we supposed to die quietly so you could feel comfortable? You could have sought council intervention, a Thoraxian said. We did, Jake spoke up. Everyone turned to look at him. I personally requested permission to protect civilian transports. I was denied. We called for council security forces when the Mercy's call was under attack. No one came. We tried your way. It doesn't work. The council's processes take time, the speaker said. Diplomacy requires patience. People were dying while you were being patient, Patricia replied. 3,000 Minorians, 109 humans, 3 million Yulani enslaved. How much patience do you expect from us? How many of our people have to die before we're allowed to defend ourselves? The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species agreed with the humans. Others demanded punishment. The noise grew louder. Patricia waited for quiet. When it didn't come, she slammed her hand on the podium. The sharp sound echoed through the chamber. Everyone stopped talking. Let me tell you something about humans, Patricia said into the silence. We come from Earth, a Class 9 death world. Do you know what that means? It means our planet has tried to kill us since we first stood upright. Ice ages that should have wiped us out. Plagues that killed millions. Predators that hunted us. Volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, droughts. Earth threw everything at us and we survived. She paused, letting her words sink in. We didn't just survive. We thrived. We became the dominant species on our world, not because we were the strongest or the fastest. We became dominant because we were adaptable, relentless, and we protected our own. When something threatened us, we fought back. When something tried to kill us, we learned from it and became stronger. Patricia looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from a dozen species. For 30 years, we came to you with open hands. We smiled, we compromised. We showed you the best parts of who we are. We did this because we wanted peace. We believed in the Council's ideals. We thought we could be different here among the stars than we were on Earth. But when you mistook our diplomacy for weakness, you made a grave error. We are still the species that survived Earth. We are still Deathworlders. And when you pushed us, when you let our people die, when you failed to act, you forced us to remember what we are. The chamber was completely silent now. Every species listened. We are still committed to peace, Patricia continued. We still believe in cooperation, but we will never again pretend to be something we're not. If you threaten us or those under our protection, you will see exactly what it means to be from a death world. We will defend ourselves. We will protect the innocent, and we will not apologize for surviving. Patricia stepped back from the podium. That's our response to your accusations. Accept it or don't, either way nothing changes. The speaker looked stunned. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. The council will need to deliberate on this matter. We will reconvene in 3 days with a decision. The session ended. Jake walked out with Patricia and the others. In the corridor outside, they were surrounded by other species representatives. Some looked angry. Some looked thoughtful. A few looked approving. A Minorian delegate approached. His species had lost 3,000 people in the first Krell attack. Ambassador Lin, I want you to know that Minoria supports humanity's actions. You did what the Council should have done months ago. Thank you. Others came forward with similar messages. The Yulani representative, newly freed from slavery, bowed deeply to Patricia. My people owe you everything, but not everyone was happy. The Velcrin representative confronted them. You've set a dangerous precedent. Now every species will think they can act unilaterally. Then maybe the Council should start protecting people better, Lauren Blake said sharply. Over the next 3 days, Jake watched as the council split into factions. Some species wanted to punish humanity. They proposed sanctions, trade restrictions, even expulsion from the council. Other species defended human actions. They argued that the council had failed in its duty to maintain peace and security. A few species, the smart ones, did something else entirely. They approached human representatives with quiet offers. The Zafali wanted to discuss joint security agreements. The Thoraxians, despite their public criticism, asked about purchasing human weapons systems. Several smaller species requested human protection, offering to become formal allies. Jake met with a delegation from the Kavari, a peaceful species whose worlds bordered former Krell territory. Their representative was a small bird-like creature named Chirik. "Captain Morrison, my people are afraid," Chirik said. "The Krell are broken, but there are other predators in the galaxy. Would Earth consider extending protection to the Kavari systems? That would depend on what you're offering in return," Jake said carefully. "Technology sharing, trade rights, bases for your ships. We have resources humanity needs. And we have something else, information." "What kind of information?" Chirik's feathers ruffled nervously. "There are species in the council who have been watching humanity carefully. Some admire your strength. Others fear it. A few are planning to test you to see how far you'll go." "Which species?" Lauren asked. "The Velkrin are organizing a coalition. They want to force the council to restrict human military operations. They're gathering support from species who are afraid of your power." Jake leaned back in his chair. "Let them try. We're not going to apologize for defending ourselves." "I thought you would say that," Chirik said. "That's why my people want to align with you. The galaxy is changing. The old rules don't work anymore. Better to be with the humans than against them." Jake shook hands with Chirik, sealing an informal agreement. It was the first of many. Over the next days, 12 species approached humanity with similar offers. They wanted security, technology, partnership. They wanted to be on the winning side. When the council reconvened, the atmosphere was different. The speaker looked tired. "The council has deliberated on humanity's actions. We cannot reach a consensus. 43% support sanctions. 38% oppose any punishment. 19% abstained." "What does that mean?" Patricia asked. "It means we cannot formally punish humanity," the speaker admitted. "However, we issue a strong warning. Any future military operations must be coordinated with council security forces. Failure to do so may result in consequences." Patricia nodded. "Understood. Will the council commit to actually responding when security situations arise?" The speaker hesitated. "We will improve our response protocols." "That's not an answer," Jake said. "With respect, Speaker, you're asking us to trust a system that failed us. That got our people killed. Why would we do that?" "Because the alternative is chaos," the speaker replied. "If every species acts independently, the council falls apart." "Maybe it should," someone said from the gallery. Everyone turned. It was a representative from the Tarvali, a minor species. "Maybe the council in its current form doesn't work. Maybe we need something new." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from 847 species shouted at each other. Some demanded sanctions against humanity. Others called for emergency military intervention. A few species, the smarter ones, stayed quiet and watched. Jake Morrison sat in the human section with Ambassador Patricia Lynn. They watched the pandemonium with calm faces. Inside, Jake felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pride. "The human delegation must explain these actions," the Velkrin representative demanded. His jellyfish-like body pulsed with agitated colors. "They have violated the spirit of council law." Patricia stood slowly. The chamber gradually quieted. Everyone wanted to hear what the humans would say. "We violated nothing," Patricia said clearly. "The council granted us permission to defend our assets." "That's exactly what we did." Commander Hughes and his battle group encountered a Krell force that posed a clear threat. They responded appropriately. "Appropriately?" a Thoraxian shouted. "They destroyed 30 warships in 11 minutes. That's not defense, that's slaughter. Would you prefer we let them destroy us?" Patricia asked. "Should we have died politely to make you comfortable?" The Thoraxian had no response to that. "For 30 years we've come to this council with open hands," Patricia continued. "We've compromised. We've been patient. We've watched as aggressive species like the Krell push boundaries and face no consequences. We've lost people because the council prefers committees to action. That ends now. This is a dangerous precedent, the Zafali speaker said. Military force should be a last resort. It was a last resort, Jake spoke up. Everyone turned to look at him. We asked permission to protect civilian transports, denied. We asked for council security forces. They didn't come. We tried your way. It didn't work. So now we do things our way. The session ended with nothing resolved. The council couldn't agree on how to respond. Some species wanted to punish humanity. Others secretly admired what humans had done. The Krell surprisingly went silent. They were regrouping, planning their next move. That next move came 3 days later. Admiral Helen Cross was in her office on the orbital fortress Bastion 1 when the alert came through. Her aide, a young officer named Kevin Drake, burst in without knocking. Admiral, we have a situation. Multiple Krell signatures entering the Sol system. Helen felt her blood turn to ice. How many? 200 contacts. It's an armada, ma'am. They're heading straight for Earth. Helen was already moving. She grabbed her jacket and ran for the command center. Her mind raced. 200 ships. The Krell were going to attack Earth itself. They wanted to break humanity's will by striking at their homeworld. They had made a terrible mistake. Activate all defense stations, Helen ordered as she entered the command center. Screens showed the Krell fleet moving past Jupiter's orbit. I want every ship, every platform, every weapon system online now. Send the emergency code to Mars, Luna, and all outer system stations. Yes, ma'am, multiple voices responded. Are they trying to communicate? Helen asked. Negative. They're maintaining communication silence and approaching an attack formation. Helen pulled up the tactical display. The Krell fleet was massive, but they were coming into humanity's home territory. Every human child learned about Earth's defenses. They were extensive, layered, and absolutely ruthless. Humans had been planning to defend Earth since before they reached the stars. Every war, every conflict, every tactical lesson learned over thousands of years went into protecting their homeworld. The Krell were about to face all of that at once. Open a channel to all defense forces, Helen said. A camera activated, broadcasting her face to every human military unit in the Sol system. This is Admiral Cross. The Krell Dominion has chosen to attack Earth. They believe we're soft. They believe we'll surrender rather than fight. They're about to learn how wrong they are. All stations, weapons free. Show them what it means to threaten humanity's home. The response came from 1,000 different voices. Marines on Luna, gunners on orbital platforms, pilots warming up fighters on Mars. They had been waiting for this. The Krell Armada passed Saturn's orbit. They ignored the mining stations and moons, focusing on Earth. That was their second mistake. Those mining stations and moons weren't just industrial sites. They were weapons platforms in disguise. Outer defense line, open fire, Helen ordered. Missiles launched from Titan, Enceladus, and a dozen other moons. Not ordinary missiles. These were capital ship killers with nuclear warheads. Hundreds of them, creating a wall of fire that the Krell had to fly through. The Krell point defense systems tried to intercept. They caught maybe half. The rest struck home. 15 Krell ships died in the first 30 seconds. They're still coming, Kevin reported. They're not breaking off. Good, Helen said coldly. Let them come closer. The Krell fleet entered the asteroid belt. Another mistake. They didn't know that humans had spent decades turning asteroids into hidden fortresses. Rock that looked dead from the outside suddenly lit up with railguns and laser batteries. Kinetic kill vehicles launched from camouflage positions. Solid chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds. They had no guidance systems, no energy signatures, just mass and velocity. When they hit Krell shields, they punched right through. 20 more Krell ships went dark. War Prime Thexus commanded the Krell flagship. He watched his forces take casualties and snarled with rage. The humans were fighting like cornered animals. Vicious, unpredictable, using every advantage. Press forward, Thexus ordered. Reach Earth. Once we threaten their homeworld, they'll surrender. But the humans weren't surrendering. They were just getting started. The Krell fleet crossed Mars' orbit. The red planet was heavily colonized. Millions of humans living in dome cities and underground habitats. The Krell expected the humans to be terrified. Instead, Mars opened fire. Orbital platforms that had been disguised as communication satellites revealed their true purpose. Magnetic accelerator cannons that could throw projectiles across planetary distances. Energy weapons that could burn through armor like paper. And drone swarms. thousands of small automated fighters that moved like angry insects. Focus fire on their flagship, Helen ordered from Bastion 1. She had marked Thexus's ship based on its command signatures. Take out their leader. Every human weapon in range turned toward the Krell flagship. Thexus tried to evade, but there was nowhere to go. Rails of metal tore through his shields. Missiles found weak points in his armor. His ship started to break apart. Thexus had time for one final thought before his ship exploded. These weren't the soft humans he expected. These were monsters. The Krell fleet wavered. Without their leader, coordination broke down. Some ships tried to retreat. Others kept pushing forward, hoping to reach Earth. None of them made it. Luna opened fire, turning the moon into one giant weapon platform. Earth's orbital defenses activated, creating a sphere of death around the planet. Human ships that had been hiding among the debris and satellites suddenly revealed themselves. Jake Morrison arrived with the Horizon's Edge as part of a reinforcement. Fleet from Zenith Prime. They had been racing, home for 2 days. He arrived just in time to see the final phase of the battle. Lauren, give me a full tactical picture, he ordered. The Krell are falling apart, Lauren reported. They've lost command and control. Some are trying to surrender, but most are fighting to the last. Jake watched human ships tear through the Krell formation. It wasn't even a battle anymore. It was an execution. The Krell had come to Earth expecting a quick victory. Instead, they found hell. The battle ended 4 hours after it began. Of the 200 Krell ships that entered the Sol system, 183 were destroyed. 17 managed to retreat, most of them badly damaged. They carried a message back to Krell space. Never threaten Earth again. Human casualties were minimal. Some damaged ships, a few destroyed defense platforms, but nothing that couldn't be repaired. Not a single Krell weapon reached Earth's atmosphere. Jake docked with Bastion 1 after the battle. Admiral Cross called all senior officers for a briefing. The command center was crowded with people, the smell of sweat and recycled air thick. Well done, Helen said simply. You all performed exactly as trained. The Krell came here thinking we were weak. They learned otherwise. What's next, Admiral? Someone asked. Helen pulled up a star chart. It showed Krell space, a cluster of systems near Council territory. Next, we finish this. The Krell military is broken but not destroyed. They still hold the Fornax system. They still have slaves, so we're going in. The Council won't approve offensive operations, Patricia Lynn said. She had come up from Earth for the briefing. Then we won't ask for approval, Helen said. We'll call it a rescue operation. The Yulani people are being held against their will. We're simply going to free them. Jake smiled. It was the same loophole they had used before. Defend assets, protect innocents. The Council might complain, but they couldn't argue with the reasoning. Captain Morrison, Helen said, looking at Jake, I want you to lead the task force. Take 6 ships and head to Fornax. Free the Yulani, dismantle Krell military installations, and make it clear this won't happen again. Yes, ma'am, Jake said. Finally, he could do something meaningful. The task force departed 3 days later. 6 human warships, including the Horizon's Edge. They jumped through hyperspace. 3 months had passed since the Fornax massacre. The Council had issued a formal condemnation of the Krell Dominion. Just words on paper. Nothing changed. The Krell grew bolder. They took the Fornax system completely, landing troops on 3 planets. The Yulani people who lived there were peaceful farmers and artists. They had no weapons, no armies. The Krell enslaved them all in a single week. Jake Morrison watched the reports from his quarters. Video footage showed Yulani children being separated from their parents, families torn apart. The Council called another meeting to discuss possible sanctions. More talking, Dennis said, disgusted. He sat across from Jake in the mess hall, pushing food around his plate. Always more talking. That's what councils do, Lauren replied. She was reading through tactical reports on her datapad. Information she wasn't supposed to have access to, but I've been hearing rumors. People back home are getting angry. What kind of rumors? Jake asked. Lauren glanced around the mess hall. A few other crew members sat at distant tables, but no one was close enough to hear. There's a protocol. Something old from when we first joined the Council. If things go badly, Earth's military is allowed to respond without Council approval. That's just a story, Dennis said. Earth wouldn't risk it. Maybe, Lauren said. But Admiral Helen Cross has been moving ships around, quietly. Ships that were supposed to be decommissioned are suddenly back in service. Jake leaned forward. How do you know this? I have friends in the fleet. They're being told to prepare for deployment, but no one's saying where or why. Before Jake could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed. Jake's communicator activated. Captain to the bridge, emergency situation. Jake ran. Lauren and Dennis were right behind him. When they reached the bridge, the main screen showed a distress signal. It's the Mercy's call, the communications officer said. Human medical frigate. They're under attack. Where? Jake demanded. Sector 447, near the disputed zone. They were bringing medical supplies to a colony suffering from plague. Krell warships intercepted them. Jake felt ice in his veins. Open a channel. The screen flickered. The bridge of the Mercy's call appeared, smoke filling the air. Fires burned in the background. A young officer with blood on her face shouted into the camera. This is Lieutenant Kate Phillips. We're taking heavy fire. Shields are down. Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. We tried to explain we're a medical ship, but they're not listening. They're going to destroy us. How many aboard? Jake asked. 147 crew and medical staff. We have escape pods, but... The ship shook violently. Kate grabbed her console to keep from falling. We're not going to make it. Hold on, Jake said. We're coming. Captain, his navigation officer, spoke up. We're 3 hours away at maximum speed. And we're not a warship, Jake knew that. The Horizon's Edge had minimal weapons, barely enough to fight off pirates. Against Krell warships, they would be useless. Get us moving anyway, Jake ordered. And send an emergency message to any council ships in the area. They tried. Jake sent out calls for help while his ship raced toward the Mercy's call. 5 council vessels were within range. None of them responded. The council's official position was that the disputed zone was too dangerous for intervention without proper authorization. Authorization that would take days to process. Jake watched helplessly as the Mercy's call fought to survive. They saw escape pods launching, tiny dots fleeing from the burning ship. The Krell warships fired on some of the pods, civilians in spacesuits tumbling through the void. They're targeting survivors, Lauren said, her voice shaking with rage. The Mercy's call exploded 18 minutes later. The screen went white, then dark. When the sensors cleared, there was only debris. Jake stood frozen on his bridge. 147 people, gone, because they tried to help sick colonists. By the time the Horizon's Edge arrived, it was over. They spent hours searching for survivors. They found 38 people alive in escape pods, 109 dead. Among the casualties was Dr. Sophie Green, whose pod had been hit by Krell weapons. Jake helped carry bodies to the medical bay. He saw Sophie's face, peaceful in death. She had been trying to save lives when the Krell murdered her. That night, Jake sent a message to Earth, not through official channels, through old military contacts he wasn't supposed to have anymore. He told them everything. He told them the council was useless. He told them humans were dying and no one cared. The response came 2 days later. Admiral Helen Cross herself encrypted message eyes only. Protocol Feral is active. Stand by for orders. Jake had heard of Protocol Feral. Every captain had, though most thought it was a myth, a failsafe built into humanity's first contact agreements. If the diplomatic approach failed catastrophically, Earth's military could act independently. It meant war was coming. Patricia Lynn called an emergency meeting with all human personnel on Zenith Prime. There were 40 humans on the station at any given time. Diplomats, trade representatives, cultural liaisons. They gathered in a secure conference room. Patricia looked older than Jake had ever seen her. Tired. I'm sure you've all heard about the Mercy's call, she began. Earth's government has made a decision. We're activating military protocols that have been dormant for 30 years. Admiral Cross is taking command of all human military assets in council space. What does that mean? Someone asked. It means we're done being peaceful, Patricia said simply. The council failed us. They let our people die, so we're going to handle things ourselves. The council will object, another diplomat said nervously. Let them object, Patricia replied. We're still going to follow council law technically. We're allowed to defend our assets. We're just going to have a very broad definition of what needs defending. Jake felt something settle in his chest. Finally they were going to act. Captain Morrison, Patricia said, looking at him. Your ship is being reassigned. Report to Docking Bay 12 in 6 hours. The Horizon's Edge is getting an upgrade. The upgrade took 3 days of round-the-clock work. Jake watched as his diplomatic conference rooms were stripped out. Weapon systems were installed, military-grade shields, better engines. The workers were human, brought in from Earth on fast ships. They knew exactly what they were doing. Dennis Carter was in heaven. "Captain, these weapon systems are incredible. Railguns, missile pods, electronic warfare suites. This ship could take on a Krell destroyer." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Jake said, though he suspected it would. His crew changed too. 30 diplomatic staff were replaced by soldiers and combat engineers, people who had been training in secret for years, waiting for this moment. They wore regular uniforms but moved like predators. Lauren Blake was promoted to full tactical officer with a military designation. She took to the role naturally, like putting on an old coat she had missed. "You were military before this, weren't you?" Jake asked her. "Marine Corps, 10 years, Lauren admitted. "But we were all told to hide that when we joined the diplomatic service." "Make humans look soft? Not anymore." "No, sir, not anymore." Admiral Cross sent a message to the council. Professional, polite, cold as ice. Humanity was formally requesting permission to engage in defensive military operations against threats to human personnel and interests. The council debated for 2 weeks. In that time, the Krell attacked 6 more targets: a mining station, 2 trade convoys, a research outpost. Each attack killed dozens. The council's response finally came. Humanity could defend its own assets but could not engage in offensive operations. Jake read the message and smiled. It was the loophole they needed. Every human in council space was an asset. Every ship, every station, every ally who asked for help. All assets worth defending. Admiral Cross's response was broadcast across all channels. Understood. War Prime Thexus of the Krell Dominion heard about humanity's military activation and laughed. Humans were soft. They talked big but had never shown any real strength. He decided to teach them a lesson. Thexus sent 30 warships to intercept a human battle group moving through the Corvin expanse. 30 Krell destroyers, each one powerful enough to crack a planet's crust. They would overwhelm the humans quickly and send a message to the rest of the galaxy. But Thexus had made a mistake. He assumed humans fought like other council species. By the book, predictable, safe. Humans weren't council species. They were Deathworlders who had been holding back for 30 years. Commander Ryan Hughes led the human battle group from the warship Defiant. He had fought in Earth's last corporate wars before the Council. He knew how humans really fought. When the Krell arrived, they found 5 human ships waiting. Thexus expected the humans to retreat or call for help. Instead, the humans attacked. What happened next shocked the galaxy. Human ships moved like nothing the Krell had seen. They didn't follow standard 3-dimensional naval tactics. They flew like they were dodging through canyons, using debris and asteroids as cover, appearing where they shouldn't be. Railguns fired solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. No energy signature to track, just kinetic death moving too fast for shields to matter. Missiles that split into submunitions, overwhelming point defense, electronic warfare that made Krell sensors go blind. The battle lasted 11 minutes. 28 Krell ships were destroyed. 2 escaped with critical damage.